Good morning, everyone. Global News is reporting, while Justin Trudeau proclaimed Thanksgiving canceled, some families are going ahead with smaller than usual gatherings or virtual events. If you read the comments, nobody is listening to Justin Trudeau's proclamation. I feel like if he was going to actually make a serious proclamation like Thanksgiving's canceled, it needs to be more serious than that. There needs to be something conversed about in the House of Commons and probably a vote on it or something to that effect. I don't think you can just unilaterally have a random press conference in September and say, yeah, Thanksgiving's canceled and expect that to be taken seriously by the Canadian public. I don't think that's going to happen. The responses to this proclamation from King Justin are hilarious. It's very, very funny. It's like plenty of families are going ahead with holiday gatherings. Thank you very much. There's lots of people saying whatever Justin says, I do the complete opposite. Since when does the federal Liberal MP tell my family what holidays we can celebrate? Right? Under any circumstances, it is not appropriate for a single MP to proclaim in Canada anything. It would be, like Erin O'Toole has proclaimed Christmas delayed. Nope, sorry. You don't get to just do that. It doesn't work like that. Okay, here's an example of polls being able to say whatever anybody wants them to say. Male voters only, 42% conservative. Female voters only, 40% liberal. Right? There you go. That's just how they can use the same number to turn things around. It's interesting that the Green have 4% in the male voters only, and in the female voters only they have 5%. You would think there would be either 9% or like less crossover. Shouldn't it add up? Okay, anyway. It seems odd. Grain of salt. Okay, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole tests positive for COVID-19 September 18th at 9:54 p.m. Okay, so September 18th at 9:54 p.m. is here. Okay, this is September. And then I didn't mean to click into it. Oh, it's not going to let me. Hold on. And if you look, here is Mr. O'Toole in his first speech to the throne on September 30th. Okay, and we're just going to do some quick math. 18th to 30th. Okay, if you count the 18th, I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Is he exempt from 14-day? No, right? I don't know. Some people were saying that's not quite. The math doesn't work out. Right? Just under the wire. I watched the speech. It's built in sections. The first 20 minutes is COVID, and then 20 minutes to 25 minutes is Erin O'Toole, and then 25 minutes he starts hitting Trudeau on kind of the failures, and then he talks about Indigenous, and then he says kind of this is what Canada's about. I really wish, and then it's the same rhetoric, right? It's the same rhetoric. I think that he's a little stronger with his rhetoric, but he uses Build Back Better a bunch. At the beginning, and he's trying to brand Trudeau with it, I think, and then he uses Build Back Stronger less, right? If you're going to use the opposition's slogan, use yours more, right? Like, I mean, it seems like an obvious kind of thing, but don't use the opposition's slogan more than you use your own slogan, and make yours more memorable. But he used Trudeau's slogan all through the COVID thing, like it was Canada branding. I'm not sure. Like he used it like everybody knows what that's talking about. And then he kind of tried to flip it and used Build Back Stronger. We need to build back stronger. Again, it's a slogan, and slogans aren't going to win the election, right? 13 days, right? I don't know. Just under the wire. And I mean, it was at night that his COVID test here. Maybe he said, "Oh, I'm sure we started feeling sick on the 16th, right? So that's enough. We were isolating for days." Right? Yeah, sure. Why not? Holly Doan moving into infrastructure. This is an interesting story. This story reads, says Holly Doan, like a government press release, doesn't mention abrupt resignation of CIB English, Canada Infrastructure Bank, CEO, or that this good news announcement comes ahead of an audit of all infrastructure spending. Why? Because Catherine McKenna can't account for a bunch of spending that she's done. And Holly Doan says, honestly, I don't know whether reporters are deliberately leaving out these key details or they have no idea what's going on. And what's going on is that the Liberals can't account for billions of infrastructure spending. Okay, and I'm going to give a hypothesis on what I think is happening, but we're going to have a quick look at this. No, we're not. This is just one headline, CBC headline: Liberal government to spend $10 billion on infrastructure to fuel pandemic economic recovery. I don't think this is new money, and I'll show you why. Well, it's not even me that doesn't think this. I read this Paul Wells thing, and he doesn't think it's new money. So I think that he's got a point. Anyway, Canada launches $10 billion infrastructure plan that aims to create 60,000 jobs. Back of the napkin math is, if you do the math, folks, that's $166,000 per job. Liberal economics at its best, right? Thumbs up. Here's Catherine McKenna talking about the opportunity here, and then we're going to learn about why the infrastructure bank this was money that was planned to be spent anyway, and it wouldn't be being rolled out in this flashy way unless they were trying to, well, they're using it in their throne speech, right? So the throne speech is setting the direction for the government and blah, 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 blah. But this was money that was on track anyway, and this is, well, there's no real increase to it. But I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Here's Catherine McKenna.
People understand what is the Canada Infrastructure Bank. It's intended to bring in the private sector. Mm-hmm. So we have huge infrastructure needs in our country, and the way we're going to help finance ambitious, sustainable infrastructure is by bringing in the private sector. So every taxpayer dollar is worth $2 to $3. And so in all of these areas, the bank has done a lot of work, and they think that there are immediate wins that are possible. So, I mean, I think stay tuned. You'll see some more announcements very shortly.
Well, this is what I want to ask you about, though, Minister, because you're saying quickly, you're saying short-term impact, and I think it is only fair to say, like, you're talking about jobs. This is part of your 1 million jobs that you announced in the throne speech. So for people who are saying, I need those jobs, like, give us a concrete sense of what kind of timeline we're talking about here, because you didn't actually even announce the projects today, right? You sort of announced, as you laid out for us a moment ago, the types of projects that you're going to invest in.
Well, I think it's really important for the private sector to have guidance. What is our vision? What are we trying to do? It can't just, be any project. So we've said 5 key areas. These are key areas where we can get short-term benefits, jobs, and then longer-term outcomes like, a more sustainable environment. And so these are projects that are going to come quickly. And Michael Sabia and I have spoken. These are projects that'll come, but some by the end of 2020, some in the next few years. Infrastructure does take time to build. I think.
The end of 2020? You're going to get shovels in the ground before the end of 2020, Minister? I don't think so. I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. Here is a little clip. We're not going to watch this clip. Ooh, that's a bad pause face. Wow, sorry about that. But it says the Conservatives say they would scrap the infrastructure bank. Nothing is getting done under the current system, said Stephanie Cusey. It's been 3 years, $35 billion, and 0 projects completed. And I saw that and I thought, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Here is a Maclean's article talking about exactly that. Farewell then, Canada Infrastructure Bank. This is Paul Wells. And usually Paul Wells is quite friendly to the Liberals, so this is interesting. This is it reads like an opinion piece, but it's in the Maclean's politics section. Link is in the description if you want to read the whole thing. I'm going to read some quotes and put some things into context for you, okay? So I'll say, and then McKenna, the infrastructure minister, repeated the sentiment, quote, there are real opportunities, she said, to take one taxpayer dollar and, as Michael Sabia has said, turn that into double or triple that so we can build even more good infrastructure for Canadians. Awesome. Money from the sky. Okay, 2 things about that, says Paul. First of all, the multiplier Sabia and McKenna were describing, $1 from Canadians through taxes, turning into $2 or $3 of total investment, i.e. matched by perhaps $1 or $2 of private or institutional investment, represents a substantial retreat from the claims this government once made of the bank. Here's a chart from the late Bill Morneau's fall economic update from Halloween 2016. That's $1 in tax money turning into $4 in investments from pension funds, ambitious entrepreneurs, or other deep-pocketed non-governmental sources. And, of course, since the lamented Morneau, imagine that each federal dollar would automatically be matched by equal investments from a province and a municipality. The expected multiplier was vast. Really, $11 from other sources from every $1 from the federal government. So, that's one thing. The other thing is the that this entire conversation is science fiction. In its 3-year history, which what I would call troubled, except usually when an organization has a troubled history, it's kind of exciting, whereas perhaps the better adjective for the Canadian Infrastructure Bank's existence is boring. It has never provided an accounting of private sector investment for any investment the bank has made or contemplated. So we don't know whether the multiplier is 11, 1, or negative pi over Quidditch. You really should feel free to assert that $1 in CIB money attracts any amount of institutional investment that makes you feel good. And I have never had any information to rebut you, and I never will. The Canadian Infrastructure Bank, or the Canada Infrastructure Bank, exists in the exquisite realm prized by all public administrators, where they can make the most extravagant claims about it. Trudeau called it an incredibly powerful tool to create opportunities, to create jobs, to create growth for the medium and long term in the country by investing in some major projects and taking on and drawing in significant international capital as well. And it is apparently distasteful to ask for any evidence of these claims. The bank's website is farcical. Imagine applying for a $10,000 loan with as little information as the bank gives you about the use it is making of $35 billion. You wouldn't get far. Sabia was appointed to replace the former board chair 6 months ago with no explanation. The BIC's bank investment. Excuse me. Hold on. BIC is the acronym for Canada Infrastructure Bank, as far as I can tell, but the B and the C being switched is what messed me up. Anyway, regardless, the BIC's CEO was sent packing on the same day with no replacement. Sabia said a new CEO would be named in the coming weeks. Probably that's even true, although the bank also thought it was about to name a new CEO in August. The previous CEO, Pierre Laval, is believed to have been turfed for failing to land enough projects. He told me last summer that $4 billion in the first year of operation was a pretty good burn rate for an organization that was given a decade to spend $35 billion. Apparently the government disagreed. Now Sabia and others were meeting reporters to announce they will spend $10 billion in the next 2 or 3 years, which by my math isn't a great acceleration. It's sometimes said that hope isn't a plan, Sabia said a few times in the manner of a man who has a plan. This plan is the result of a serious analysis of current potential projects. In short, this plan is real. Great, can we see it? Of course not. But since hope isn't a plan, perhaps repetition is. Those foundations are solid because the analysis have been done, he said, and we have done extremely rigorous, disciplined analysis, and it's built on analysis, specific projects, real projects. It reminds me, and this is me now, there's more to this article and you should read it, but I will not finish it. This reminds me when Trudeau stands on stage and says global warming is real and it's affecting us now, right? He's like underscoring what he's trying to drive forward. And yeah, like this spending, 3 years, never had a project done. And if McKenna's announcing we're ready, we're shovels ready and we hope to get some infrastructure projects done before the end of 2020, and she doesn't have specifics, do you believe her? Like, why? Why would you believe her? I don't believe her. I meant to introduce her as dog-eating minister as well. My bad. Anyway, moving on. This is what Pierre Poilievre says. He says, well, I'll let him say it. Here we go.
I rise today to report 1 million missing paychecks. That's the number of people who've lost their jobs since February and have not been hired back. We have the highest unemployment in the G7. The US, UK, France, Italy, Japan, Germany, they all had COVID too, but they have lower unemployment than we do. Mr. Speaker, when will this government recognize that their plan to impose austerity on private sector mines and small businesses is not working?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the economic support we have been providing to Canadians during the pandemic has not only prevented a great deal of human misery, it is also driving our economic recovery. And you don't need to take my word for it. I quote, "Federal government income support programs have so far been paramount for averting the delinquency tsunami and protecting the economy." TD economist Ksenia Bushmianova.
Full member for Carleton.
Oh yes, the bankers are very happy. Yeah. They're making all kinds of money these days, Mr. Speaker. But you know who's not happy? The million working class people who no longer have jobs.
Yes.
Who had to come home and sit at the kitchen table with their spouse and say, honey, I no longer have work or a paycheck, and I don't know what we're going to do. No government program can replace the mighty force of our 20 million workers, the power of a paycheck. When will this government get out of the way and let our workers get back into jobs?
And I just want to point out, I'm just going to stop it there. Link is in the description if you want to watch the rest of it. She's very, very pleased with her response. She's very happy with her response. I thought it was very funny. Just she was very she was very pleased with herself, sat back down, big smile. You don't have to take my word for it. This economist agrees with me, and that's good enough. That's good enough for my caucus and good enough for the NDP. So good enough for the government of Canada, right? So, but it's interesting, the wrong-headedness of this government, right? And I really do think we're looking at another lockdown. But Pierre Poilievre says, Trudeau again claiming that spending great gobs of borrowed money will create jobs. If true, then why has his $380 billion deficit given us the highest jobless rate in the G7? Yeah. Right? Like, there are real problems here. They're promising to use the Canada Investment Bank, Infrastructure Bank, to deliver 1 million jobs. This thing has never delivered anything previously. Why are we supposed to believe them that this is going to deliver 1 million jobs in the short term? Right? Like, why are we supposed to believe that this economic structure that is resulting in the unemployment, right? Like the highest unemployment, the highest jobless rate in the G7, according to Mr. Poilievre. So it seems like a terrible waste. Another terrible waste, they're spending money on tourism. I'll get to that in just a second here. Ottawa spending another $600 million to help businesses survive lockdowns. Like I said, I think we're heading into another lockdown. The federal government is giving $600 million to help small and medium-sized businesses deal with possible lockdowns amid a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, Radio Canada has learned. The funding aimed at sectors including tourism, manufacturing, and technology will be added to the $962 million already invested in the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. The announcement will be made Friday by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I mean, I think that there's tourism incentives to go to like Ottawa. Just across the way, though, there's like mass red zone lockdowns, and it seems like an interesting thing to invest money in tourism during this time, right? Like, your actions speak louder than words. So if you're investing in tourism, you're trying to encourage people to go and visit places. And, it doesn't seem like a good idea if you believe the rhetoric, right? If you believe that moving around increases the potential spread and blah, 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 right? If you completely discount the fact that we're increasing the amount of testing by a lot and the percentage positives are declining, right? So anyway, back to this. Another $456 million of the money will be made available to help businesses struggling to bridge their finances through another lockdown. It will be distributed through regional development agencies. Another $144 million will help provide capital and technical support to rural businesses and communities through the offices of Community Futures Canada, which provides small business services to rural communities. The CFIB estimates that 160,000 or 14% of small and medium-sized businesses in Canada are at risk of closing their doors for good due to COVID-19. The tourism, hotel, and catering sectors are particularly threatened. For example, the CFIB is calling for the commercial. Several federal measures need a new coat of paint, said Guenta. Oh no, that's terrible. I got that terribly wrong. Sorry about that. For example, the CFIB is calling for the commercial rent assistance program, which expired on Wednesday, to be renewed and made more accessible to small businesses. The CFIB also wants to know more about the extension of the wage subsidy program for businesses into the next summer, as was promised in the Trudeau government's speech from the throne. The Minister of Economic Development indicated Thursday the government was preparing to provide more help. Entrepreneurs in Montreal, all across Quebec, worked really hard to get through the first wave, and what we want to say to them today is there's hope. We will get you through the second wave, Melanie Joly said in Ottawa. When asked about what help the government will provide during a second wave, Joly said she recognizes that the current situation is very difficult. We know we have to do more, and we will do more, she said. And I agree with Mr. Poilievre. I think it's time for the government to get out of the way and let people get back to work and recognize that the cases and the hospitalizations and the ICU numbers, the increase in case numbers is not being followed by those other two metrics, at least not that I've seen. So if I'm incorrect, I'll post something, or I'll mention it tomorrow. But as far as I've seen so far, Nope. Okay, and we are going to touch back on COVID in a minute, but I want to talk about Michael Chong is tweeting out, once again, Canada is absent in the Asia Pacific. Why aren't we at the talks with 4 allies in the biggest economies in the world? The Quad Group is a multilateral democratic counter to China, another example of liberal intolerance with regard to China. And the Indo-Pacific Quad Group to meet in Japan and show of unity to China. So interesting stuff. I wonder why we're not invited. I don't wonder why we're not invited. I don't. Not at all. Here's another kind of associated Canadian politics story that I've been talking about a lot. I've talked about the atmospheric water generators machines, also known as dehumidifiers. And like as a solution to the problem potentially. But here is Gary Vidal. He's an MP. He says, earlier this week, CBC reported the Liberals are no longer planning to meet the 2021 target to eliminate long-term drinking water advisories on First Nations. Today I asked, if not 2021, when? Instead of answering, Justin Trudeau attacked the idea of setting a target. Very disappointing. I'm not going to play it because it's just the usual Trudeau word salad. Why is Darren Fisher, Nova Scotia, answering all the health questions today? Where is Patty Haydu? I don't know, House of Commons staffer. I don't know, but we're paying attention. Where is Patty Haydu? She's done an awful job. Awful. And she's more focused on racism, as I talked about yesterday. Nova Scotia moves to speed up COVID-19 test screening. Premier says close to signing on to app. And I said, I said the app doesn't work. Even in Ontario, there hasn't been nearly enough adoption of the app in Ontario. It's an expensive boondoggle, and it's useless. And then this guy, Rasta, says pretty large rural population without cell service, even in Halifax, regional municipality. They don't get emergency alerts either. Free COVID exposure app. Maybe it's time to address the communication deficit in the province. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? But tone deaf. Here is the end of the show, or coming to the end of the show, and this is COVID related. Lisa, who, based on her Twitter image, I'm not sure where she sourced this. I thought a COVID test was more expensive than $45, but we can go with Lisa's numbers for now. And she says, did some math today. Each COVID test costs $45, and we have almost conducted 3.7 million tests in Ontario. And doing the math is that's a lot of money. If Ford Nation reaches his goal of 75,000 tests a day, it will cost $3.3 million a day. Could we perhaps report on this? Yeah, sure. There you go. I reported on it. That seems expensive, and it seems wrong-headed considering the amount of false positives, and the calibration of the test is rated too high to be accurate, right? So it's the higher the rating, the PCR rating, the more times you amplify it. If you amplify it more than 25 times, then you're more likely to get a false positive. And the PCR tests are set to be amplified to 35 to 45, as far as I know, the last I saw. Again, if I'm wrong, I'll post something about it, or I'll talk about it again. But as far as I know, at this point in time, it seems wrong-headed to be increasing the testing, right? Like, if we've got hospitalizations and all of that other stuff increasing, then okay. If there's necessary testing that seem to be cutting down on the spread of the virus, okay. I'm skeptical, but okay. But as far as the masks and the distancing, I'd love to see science backing this up. Science saying that social distancing actually cuts down on infection, because now we're seeing an increase in cases, right? So is that because social distancing doesn't work? Is that because masks don't work? It seems like they've got a lot wrong, and it seems like they're not willing to admit they're wrong. And it seems like that's their biggest that's one of their biggest mistakes. Shutting the economy down, that eclipses being wrong. I mean, it's part and parcel of being wrong, but it eclipses being wrong about masks and social distancing. That's the biggest mistake, I think, that was made. Quebec gives police legal tools to enter homes quickly to stop gatherings during COVID-19. Right? I mean, we're there. Welcome to the 1930s, very obviously, right? If you guys get together with your friends and family, you will, in the red zones in Quebec, you are already guilty, and the police will come in and bust it up. And you have no legal recourse. You have no rights. No rights, not even in your own home, right? I mean, I guess in Quebec, maybe Thanksgiving is canceled if the police show up and bust up your Thanksgiving party, right? Very, very, very scary. Very scary. Here is Farah Nasser, and I think she's Global News. Journalist, yeah, Global News. And she says, what I'm calling for is transparency. Who is sitting at the command table? Who are the experts, and what advice are they giving the Premier? Dr. Warner tells Global News, that it's not clear the best scientific minds are being consulted. Now, it's funny because I thought, yeah, I agree entirely. And then I watched Dr. Warner's video, and he's saying that there's a lot of danger and everybody should be scared and blah, 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 blah. Schools have been open for a month, right? Almost a month. And where are the big outbreaks? Are there big outbreaks? No? Okay, so things are working, things are good. But there's lots of fear fostering, and I would love to see all of their data. I would love to see why are you making the decision that social distancing is mandatory? Why are you making the decision that masks are mandatory? What are the criteria you will consider for repeal of these things? Who is advising you? What are they invested in? How come we don't know this? We should know this. We should be able to hold accountable the people who are leading us. And I don't know. We have that mechanism within the Ontario framework, and we can elect the premier, et cetera, and all that stuff. But if people are advising him that have, well, who knows who their influences are, then is that better? Is that governance is that having people who are being held accountable in those positions, right? Like, and I guess that you're trusting the politician to have good advisors. And are we supposed to just trust that they're good blind? Like that's the part I'm struggling with here, right? And I don't know that there should be rules that surround the advisors to a government, right? Because who do you always call for advice, right? But if you're calling your brother who's in debt for a lot of money for advice on borrowing money, that might not be a great idea, right? Maybe the public should know that. And who knows, right? Doug Ford's brother, right? I mean, sadly, Rob's not around, but the advisors, I don't know. We should have an idea of who these people are, maybe. It's weird that we don't. Okay. Dr. Vivian Stamatopoulos, I think that's pretty good. She says, a snapshot of the Long-Term Care Commission transcripts where residents got to speak. This living nightmare we put these seniors through must never happen again. Never again. And yeah, I'm going to end the show on this one. This is just 4 stories, and it sounds very awful, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And I hope that we have a better alternative if there is another lockdown. I hope Quebec is taking this into consideration. But here it is. Here's one person's story. The inconsistency of communication, staffing, and shortages of staff was very devastating. Isolation for residents not being able to socialize with their peers and families caused great depression, as well as having to stay in the rooms and eating alone to not get hot meals, to get hot meals no longer just warm and soggy. Lack of activation caused non-stimulation and left residents dormant and sleeping all the time. What recreational activities that there were available was spent mostly with the dementia residents because they needed more one-to-one care and stimulation than they never did before. With not being able to see families and friends, there was no emotional interaction whatsoever. It was just stay in your room, dear. Everything is fine. Don't worry. Here's another one. When I think about the last 6 months, the key areas that affected me negatively are little to no communication from my home to me. I had no idea what was happening, no human contact, and when I did see a human being, I couldn't even see their smile, boredom, and broken-spirited. Being alone in one room every day almost made me crazy. There were many days when I didn't want to get out of bed. I was very sad, very lonely, very afraid. Now when I see those dog cages on TV for stray animals, I see myself as one of these neglected, filthy, and starving for love and affection little critters. I now weep for our human race and mankind. Nobody cares. Echoes my plight daily. Are we not in this boat called pandemic altogether? The fear is a torment. It elevates blood pressure. It elevates anxiety. The fear that we experience, it is all of it is exploding in the last 6 months. It hurts. We are isolated, alone, without family or friends to visit with us. I don't want to go through this ever in my life again. And I pray and hope that, by gosh, if there's another wave, let's deal with it adequately, appropriately, efficiently, and directly. Thank you. So I go back to leading by proclamation. And do you think that a single MP should be able to proclaim on TV Thanksgiving's canceled? I don't know. I don't think that's within the power of a single MP. I don't think that even if he is the prime minister, I don't think that anybody should have the power to inflict that on anybody, right? My goodness. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful